There are people in this world whose quiet presence causes an entire room to shift. You're not like everyone else. The storms you've weathered didn't just make you strong, they turned you into a living example of quiet power. If only you knew how rare it is to walk into a space and change the atmosphere with nothing but your calm certainty. You don't need noise to prove your worth, you only need the steady pulse of your own truth. Today, know that your ability to hold your ground, to stand in your own story without flinching, is the very thing that sets you apart. If you're hearing this, you're not just watching, you're becoming the proof that staying true to yourself is more powerful than anything they could ever say or do. Something remarkable takes place when someone decides to stop reacting to chaos and simply anchors themselves in calm self-awareness. The usual tactics that once stirred your emotions, those desperate attempts to spark a reaction, fall flat when met with your centered quiet. It's not surrender, it's a choice to conserve your energy for what actually matters. Suddenly, those who thought they could steer your feelings or dictate your journey realize their influence has vanished. The rules of the game have changed, not because you played harder, but because you stopped playing at all. In this new space, you're no longer shaped by what happened to you, you're defined by the stability you've built inside yourself. And while some people struggle to understand how you became so unshakable, you know it was the very moment you stopped responding to the noise that your real strength finally emerged. Some people move through life like living mirrors, reflecting everything around them without letting anything distort their core. That's what separates the rare from the ordinary. There's a kind of presence that can't be shaken, a depth that can't be touched by shallow intentions. When that kind of strength settles in, it's felt by everyone, even the ones who once thought they held power over it. It starts with an inner shift that turns constant analysis into quiet observation. What once pulled at attention and emotion now drifts by, noticed but not absorbed. Attempts to draw a response land with no effect, as if signals are being sent into a void. Familiar voices lose their pull, and performances that once sounded convincing now echo with emptiness. Over time, this new stability reshapes every connection, no more tangled wires, no more hooks hidden in conversation. Where there was once a habit of responding to every move, now stands a deep and anchored composure, impossible to disrupt. There's nothing left to exploit, nothing left to lure out. This is the emergence of real insight, one that doesn't need to announce itself, because its impact is impossible to ignore. On the other side, those who relied on predictable reactions find themselves searching for an audience that's quietly stepped away. The cycle that depended on constant emotional feedback just runs out of fuel. It's not about winning or losing, it's about reaching a moment when old games lose meaning. What's left is the echo of attempts that no longer land, and the realization that the connection they tried to control has become a closed circuit. Nights grow longer as their mind circles back to moments of lost influence. They look for signs of the shift, when trust transformed into discernment, when easy connection gave way to an unspoken distance. Their memory replays scenes, searching for what changed, but the answer was never in the words, it was in the silence that finally settled between them. Some walk through life with a rare kind of sensitivity that can't be taken or faked. When a person finally learns to trust the wisdom born from heartbreak, the rules of engagement are rewritten, no longer surviving in someone else's shadow, but building a home in their own light. Betrayal often wears an invisible mask, slowly shifting boundaries and blurring lines until the ground beneath feels unsteady. The ones who orchestrate these hidden schemes rely on confusion, scattering hints and partial explanations, hoping their target will stumble. By feeding uncertainty, they hope to make someone question everything inside themselves. Yet, those who are attuned to their deeper intuition will find that it cannot be permanently dimmed. What draws others near, empathy, honesty, the ability to believe the best in people, becomes the very shield that makes real harm impossible. The sensitivity that once seemed like a weakness becomes a signal, alerting them to shifts in the atmosphere that others might miss. It's the quiet, relentless search for what's real that eventually breaks the cycle and reclaims the story. This awakening isn't just about seeing a single mask fall away. It's a complete change in vision, an ability to spot the hidden cracks in every illusion, to separate what's said from what's intended, to sense the subtle disconnect between promises and reality. This new way of moving through the world naturally keeps pretense at a distance. People who once felt comfortable slipping by unnoticed now become uneasy, as if the air itself has changed around them. They sense an invisible boundary, something that makes concealment impossible. Those who once depended on secrecy now feel exposed under a gaze that isn't judging, just unwilling to look away. The shift leaves those who built their influence on uncertainty scrambling for ground that no longer exists. They find themselves alone in a room where the spotlight now reveals their own reflection. While they sift through memories, searching for the instant the dynamic shifted, they realize too late that the story was never really about them. No matter what moves they make to recover their footing, fluctuating between over-the-top gestures and attempts to claim the role of the injured party, they can't reverse what's happened. The calm that now surrounds their former target is no performance, it's a natural evolution, a quiet distance that no longer responds to provocation or apology. What once set every nerve on edge now registers as little more than a faint echo, fading farther away with every passing day. Some shifts can't be measured by ordinary means. When a person steps into a new state of being, even unseen forces seem to take notice. This kind of evolution isn't just personal, it's felt across invisible landscapes, as if something ancient is cheering you on, as if reality itself has begun to move in harmony with your choices. Every bit of energy that was siphoned away, every effort someone made to interfere, is now caught in a cycle that ultimately returns what was lost, amplified, and renewed. Attempts to drain your spirit become the very reason you rise higher, becoming fuel for your next breakthrough. As this balance unfolds, the one who operated in the shadows finds that their efforts begin to unravel in unexpected ways. Instead of moving ahead with ease, they encounter repeating loops and frustrations. Old habits become traps rather than tools. Where once their words could easily charm, now the facade starts to show through. Others begin to feel a subtle disconnect and pull away, uncertain but unable to ignore the shift. Invitations fade, support drifts, and new ventures fizzle before they begin, not as punishment, but as a natural response to intentions that no longer resonate with a higher rhythm. While one story is slowing, another is speeding up. Energy once tangled in confusion is now free to build, create, and flourish. The insight gained from past hardships acts as a magnet for situations that match your renewed clarity. Paths that once seemed out of reach become accessible, while connections with people who value honesty and depth start to form. This isn't random fortune. It's the direct result of choosing transparency over illusion. The field around you changes, and with it, your entire reality reorganizes in your favor. Meanwhile, the former architect of disruption senses a growing gap. Their usual methods lose effectiveness, and opportunities quietly slip away. It becomes clear, on some level, that every attempt to limit you has only strengthened your momentum, turning resistance into momentum and making their old strategies obsolete. Rare are those whose growth becomes so profound that even the subtle threads of old connections can't hold them back. When a shift like this happens, the ripple can be felt on levels far deeper than any surface conversation, changing the fabric of every relationship, every opportunity, and even the quality of silence around you. There comes a point when someone realizes they're not just losing contact, but being cut off from the wellspring they depended on for emotional fuel. What once kept their world animated is gone, and the absence stings in ways they never expected. They might attempt to circle back, dropping messages, appearing unexpectedly, or sending signals through mutual contacts. But what used to feel urgent or compelling now arrives as little more than static, fading memories from a chapter already closed. Where once there was anxiety or longing to decode their behavior, now there's only quiet curiosity, a gentle awareness that no longer clings, but simply observes. This transformation marks more than the closing of a door, it signals the crossing of a threshold into an entirely different kind of awareness. Old manipulation techniques dissolve in the presence of unwavering discernment. No contract, no confession, no performance can slip past the new boundaries of clarity. Patterns that once felt mysterious now appear almost transparent. People who once managed to sway your decisions find that their familiar scripts have lost all traction. Instead, they quietly move on, unable to make sense of their own discomfort in your presence. The web of old agreements falls away, making space for genuine encounters that resonate with your truest self. At first, the landscape may seem sparse, but this solitude is the gentle clearing before the arrival of those who truly belong in your orbit. As connections thin out, what remains is an undeniable sense of ease. What used to trigger waves of uncertainty now barely registers as a passing thought. This isn't about being numb or avoiding life, it's the natural outgrowth of living in a way that honors what's real over what's convenient. Energy is now reserved for what lifts and sustains, not what drains. All around, signs begin to gather, moments of perfect timing, new doors opening, fresh faces whose presence brings genuine excitement. The flow of life speeds up, bringing exactly what aligns with your purpose, with little effort on your part. Those who walk in honesty and integrity notice the world itself bends to support their path, offering opportunities and connections that once seemed unimaginable. In every way, truth becomes its own reward, and the universe itself seems to celebrate your decision to move forward without compromise. True strength is sometimes revealed not in moments of victory, but in the quiet aftermath, when what was meant to break you instead launches you forward, and the very people who underestimated you find themselves lost in the wake of your transformation. Watching from afar, the architect of your pain is confronted with a reality they never imagined. What they thought would leave you diminished has, against all odds, expanded your presence. Instead of retreating, you have only grown more vibrant, and every trace of their sabotage has become a stepping stone beneath your feet. This reversal unsettles them deeply. The outcome they expected dissolves, replaced by a confusing mix of intrigue and apprehension. They stand at a distance, both wanting to approach and fearing what they might see if they look too closely. The transformation that unfolded in you is impossible to deny, even for them. It turns their assumptions upside down, forcing them to consider that what they believed about power, control, and resilience may have been flawed from the beginning. Part of them is drawn toward the clarity you embody, sensing that something significant is available if only they're willing to face the discomfort of honest self-examination. But another part is paralyzed by the prospect of having to unravel old beliefs, unsure whether growth is worth the price of giving up familiar patterns. Their words and actions become erratic, swinging between bravado and uncertainty, praise and accusation, as they wrestle with the contradiction of admiring what frightens them most. The mirror you now hold up to them is impossible to avoid. In your progress, they're forced to confront their own emptiness, the hollow foundation beneath years of strategy and concealment. The sudden loss of influence leaves them exposed, unsure how to fill the void. Yet in this discomfort lies a doorway. The distance you maintain isn't an act of punishment, it's the necessary space for genuine change. Without the distractions of old games, they're left to consider new possibilities, to abandon the endless search for validation, to risk a deeper honesty, to finally face themselves in ways they never have before. Some find courage in this moment, using your journey as inspiration to examine their own shadows, to untangle the habits that kept them stuck, and to let go of the impulse to dominate or deceive. In time, they might discover that connection built on authenticity brings a fulfillment they've never known. Others, gripped by fear or denial, burrow deeper into old habits, blaming fate or circumstance for their isolation, never quite grasping the lesson at hand. Whatever path they choose, your responsibility is finished. By rising above the old dynamics, you have become a living example of what happens when someone refuses to be defined by pain and chooses growth instead. Sometimes one person's quiet revolution is all it takes to send subtle tremors through the entire landscape. Change is rarely loud, often, it's the silent example that stirs others to look inward and wonder if more is possible for themselves. When a single individual refuses to be drawn into old games, it has a way of inspiring courage in places you'll never see. By stepping away from the endless cycle of pretense and manipulation, you signal to others that their own instincts are worth trusting, that their boundaries matter, and that walking away from what drains them is not only allowed, it's necessary. This is how new patterns take root in a world hungry for authenticity. Small acts of truth ripple outward, giving rise to wider tides of transformation. The one who once sought to undermine your foundation unwittingly becomes a participant in this larger unfolding. Their attempt to limit your growth sets off a chain of events that stretches far beyond either of you, raising the collective standard of what's possible. While this doesn't erase the wounds inflicted, it reframes the story, showing how even destruction can fertilize the soil for new beginnings. What was once meant as a closed door is now a gateway. What started as an attempt to confine you becomes the moment you break through. The full circle is unmistakable. The calm you now carry is no longer about hiding pain, but about standing firmly outside the old pattern, unmoved by provocations that once held sway. There's no bitterness, no hardness, only a clear-eyed knowing that comes from seeing through to the heart of things. This steadiness is what the world needs most, people able to remain grounded while everything swirls, people who can witness confusion without being pulled into it, people whose pain has become their wisdom instead of their prison. The person who tried to hold you back may keep a distant eye, half expecting the tide to turn, convinced you'll slide back into the roles that gave them control. But each day you remain unwavering, the truth grows more obvious. You've stepped onto a path that doesn't allow for backward movement. A longing begins to grow within them, a curiosity about the peace they sense radiating from your new way of being. They remember the old dynamic and can't help but compare it to the present, feeling both drawn toward your example and intimidated by what it might mean for them. There is a quiet hope that being near you could ignite change in their own life. But the price of genuine closeness is steep. It means shedding the layers they've worn for protection, releasing the habits that once kept them safe but now only keep them stuck. The connection they seek would require a total reimagining of themselves, the very thing they both crave and resist. There comes a point when every journey circles back on itself, revealing meaning that wasn't visible from the start. Sometimes, the greatest change is witnessed not in the one who set the trap, but in the one who refused to be caught. Someone who tried to rewrite your story now finds themselves studying the chapters you've written in the aftermath, unable to pretend that their old habits still hold power. Whether or not they choose to step into growth is now a question for their own path. Your place in this unfolding tale is complete. You've offered a living example, a spark for renewal, a new possibility simply by daring to change. When a person rises above the oldest wounds, the world itself takes note. The lessons you've embodied become available to anyone who's ready to listen. What began as a test of endurance has quietly shifted into a gift of guidance for all who come after. This is what it means to become a blueprint for others. Not because of any claim to perfection, but by willingly carving a new trail through pain and letting others see the results. You turn disappointment into clarity, betrayal into a threshold, wounds into stepping stones. What once threatened to undo you instead became the moment you discovered how unbreakable you truly are. Approval, recognition, acceptance, all of it is now sourced from within, untouched by anyone else's choices. That is the real legacy of this transformation. The evidence is visible in your ease, your groundedness, your ability to find direction in chaos. The one who thought they held the power was, in the end, only pointing you back to a strength that was always yours. Their attempts to limit you became the crucible that revealed your own capacity for self-renewal. The old game fades into memory, replaced by a new sense of purpose. The world is left changed, the impact of your choices continuing to echo long after the drama has ended. This new piece is not empty, it's the foundation for everything that follows. Every moment spent in silence, every step away from conflict, every refusal to return to old patterns has become a quiet act of revolution, proof that it's possible to rise, again and again, without ever being pulled back into someone else's narrative. There's nothing left to prove, nothing left to resist. The ending becomes a beginning, and the possibilities for what comes next are infinite. The entire universe, it seems, stands witness, not to the pain, but to the resilience that has now become your gift to the world.